Hey folks, I've been thinking about hate watching lately, just kind of as a practice because, mostly because I came across the sphere of Twitter that seems to have actually liked The Rise of Skywalker and have been struggling to afford the therapy costs associated with that, so, an introspection, I guess. But the experience kind of reminded me of a plan that I had after the movie came out, about a week later, once kind of the magic of seeing it at least in a theater had worn off. And I realized that I wanted to do kind of a dissection of the movie and why it was terrible, because it really upset me. Like it wasn't just any old bad movie, right? It was a movie that I was excited for, that I had hopes for, that I was ready to love, and it just sucked. Just like straight up, and so I was going to express my disdain for this film through the medium of video, and it's not the most original idea. Other people have done the same thing, but I think I had some unique points, and I felt like I had something to add to the conversation, at least at the time. But you'll notice that there is no such video on this channel, and it's not because it's been deleted, it's because it was never made. The reason for that is because when it came time to actually rewatch the movie, to collect my thoughts and to get my points together, I couldn't do it. Like, I couldn't put myself through that. I did not want to be angry for the, whatever, hour and a half, 2 hours, however long that movie is. And thinking about that now, I realize that, well, the reason that I couldn't do it is because the whole premise of my project was kind of mistaken from the outset. Critiquing media is a very good thing, and in fact, I think that a lot of the video essays made about Rise of Skywalker have been quite good, but I didn't really want to dissect Rise of Skywalker as an interesting piece of media, or even as a bad piece of media. I wanted to dissect The Rise of Skywalker because it burned my house down and keyed my car. I was mad. I hated it. I'm still mad. It's a bad movie. It really sucks. It really sours my whole experience with the sequel trilogy, which, sucks, because 2015 was a good year. But okay, this video isn't really about The Rise of Skywalker. I hope you gathered that from the title and thumbnail. This is a video about the experience of hate watching a piece of media, and one of the routes that a person can take when they decide to undertake this endeavor. Enter Hazbin Hotel, a solid 7 out of 10 show that's stuck in my brain more than I care to admit, mostly just because it scratches a certain itch that I think a lot of contemporary media doesn't try to scratch very often, not to mention it's a musical and some of the songs are bops. I've now watched it twice, and I will probably watch it a third time in preparation for an eventual season 2, but it shouldn't surprise you from the premise, right? And demons might not be all bad, that some people were going to be upset by this show, especially on the interwebs, where we are upset about everything. Some people are pissed off that the show is heretical and that it's this horribly offensive perversion of Christian theology, and other people are upset that it's not offensive enough and that it's fake edgy. Which is a dichotomy I haven't really managed to rationalize at this point in time, but there it is in all its glory. In particular, this show has drawn the ire of YouTube film reviewer Possum Reviews, a creator that I have my fair share of disagreements with, and for some reason, I don't know, because I don't actually follow him, this just came up on my feed, he's decided to undertake the task of watching through the entirety of Hazbin Hotel and giving his thoughts on Twitter. Maybe there's some video planned in the future about this, I don't know. Maybe there's one out by the time that this video is released. What called out to me about this little project, though, is that Possum's initial couple of tweet threads about the show were, like, off-the-wall insane. Like, they read more like a manifesto than a piece of actual film criticism, not to be a dick or anything. But then they got more interesting, and that's why I've actually decided to make a video on this, because, I don't know, dissecting a person's bad critiques of a show is, it's a well that I can only come back to every once in a while. But alright, he took an interesting route, and let's just get into that. And of course, to do that, I do have to talk about some of his really bad arguments and why they're so bafflingly bad. The thread opens with Possum discussing Hazbin's character designs, which he takes great issue with. I don't care all that much that he dislikes them, of course, but the moment that he actually tries to get objective, things go off the rails. For instance, when in the second thread he complains that nothing about the radio demon's design reflects his radio motif besides the microphone that he carries about. And what? Like, what's he talking about? You can like or dislike the design, but Alistair is obviously a hellish imagining of like a classy media presenter. The jacket, monocle, permanent faux smile, not to mention the constant radio filter of his voice that I'm glad that they toned down for the Prime show. If you showed me a 10-second clip of this character out of context, I could have easily identified him as an old-timey spokesperson of some sort long before I'd heard of the show. I guess this problem just comes out of absolutely nowhere, but he preempts the critique with what I would argue is an even worse one by acknowledging that, alright, fine, yeah, he's dressed in early 20th century attire, but hey, so is everyone else, and why are they even dressed that way if the show doesn't take place in the early 20th century? Beyond the fact that, I'm sorry, this character's design just screams smooth-talking raconteur, this show establishes almost immediately that it's set in hell, and like, yeah, there's gonna be different clothing styles. Especially when a bunch of these characters died decades to centuries ago. Like, this entire criticism feels just like desperate grasping at straws in the absolute worst way. Like a middle schooler who's just been publicly insulted and is now searching for any sort of comeback. This show about demons in hell has smartphones, but it also has characters in top hats. And checkmate, liberals. He does basically the same thing again, complaining that the snake guy has egg minions. He's just, like, mad about it. He doesn't personally associate eggs with snakes, so the snake guy can't have eggs, I guess. And yeah, most of this thread just continues with those sorts of complaints, getting mad about really just every character. Assume that if I skip a comment here, like his complaint that the songs are hard to understand, it's just because I don't really care about it. Maybe it's right, you know? Give him points for that. He's mad about the pointless swearing, which I will probably address in some other format because it's not really relevant to this particular video. And then he does the same thing that I've told y'all that the Critical Drinker does, where he invents a goal for the show and then complains that they never reached it. See, Possum Reviews thinks that if Hazbin Hotel wants demons with traits that reflect how they died, these traits need to be obvious and surface level. Because they aren't, the show has failed in some respect. Of course, it's fine if you want that, but this show goes out of its way to hide small details and character designs that only come out under certain circumstances. You can't act like the show failed to make Alistair's backstory obvious when it's actively trying to make you put the pieces together without holding your hand through the whole experience. When he's overly emotional, small parts of the design manifest that paint a clearer picture of what happened to him, and they don't want you to take one look at him and say, oh yes, this was a serial killer shot by a hunter who mistook him for a deer. This is good character design. But okay, a couple more dumb things, and then I promise we will get to the point. In his review of episode 1, he complains that the show employs Adam as its main angel antagonist instead of the Archangel Michael. Guess he isn't Mormon, which I already find odd because the show has a shitload of characters. I really don't know if it needs to be even more overstuffed. And Adam is clearly the more essential part of the puzzle, given he's one of the main characters of the show's founding myth. But whatever. What I find funny is that he's annoyed Adam is portrayed almost identically to all the other demons, swearing, selfish, all that. A fact that is absolutely core to the show's central thesis, and something that might be worth analyzing if you were watching this show for any reason other than to get mad. He is also upset that they only showed a bad angel in episode 1, remarking that if they wanted him to regard angels with any sort of depth, then they should have shown him a nicer or more unique angel to begin with. And then he complains that the show evoked images of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, which apparently it should not be doing. But okay, enough waffling. Why do I care about all this? Put simply, the vast majority of this guy's complaints are either nonsense or would actively make the show worse if they were corrected for. Hazbin Hotel is about a young girl's delusional dream to redeem sinners and get them into heaven, a place that she's been conditioned not to trust, but which she's been told is still much better than hell. Running away from the childlike My Little Pony-esque nature of this premise would, I think, feel kind of dishonest and cheap. Showing us that angels are actually morally upstanding, if a bit aloof, would break any sort of tension we have. We would immediately recognize that, oh yeah, I guess angels are unconditionally better than demons, and not really have to worry about the heaven-hell ambiguity that the show is going for, before we even factor in that the show is really trying to tell us something about Adam as a character by making him dress and act like a demon. You know, basic setup and payoff. It's not just bad criticism, it's baffling criticism, the kind of stuff that I don't really know what to do with. What would you say to a person who thinks that The Dark Knight is dumb and stupid for having a guy dressed as a bat and a villain that isn't unambiguously good or evil? Congratulations, yes, that's the point. Explain your problem or leave me alone, sir, please. But like I said before, if that were all this series of threads were, I wouldn't really have much of a point to make beyond this guy's really silly, isn't he? I could pick apart a bunch of his other dumbass comments and call it a day, but I don't know, that wouldn't make for super interesting content, at least not without some overarching point. But then he said something that caught my eye. And no, it wasn't his genuinely kind of funny trust exorcise pun. I'm assuming that was intentional. It's the end of his review of episode 4, which the show's viewers will recognize as being a bit of an oddball episode, quite a bit darker and more viscerally upsetting than the rest of the show. I'm just going to assume that you've seen it here. He says that he appreciates the show's attempt to make an unlikable character more likable, even if he doesn't really like the tone shift. He feels like the song about Angel Dust's abuse is a bit exploitative and could have been handled more tastefully, and he suggests a way to fix the problem that I don't necessarily agree with, but makes enough sense and could probably be handled well. He adds in a dumb extra critique at the end, but I'll give it a pass. Do you see what's happening here? No? I'll give a couple more examples. Reviewing episode 5, he criticizes the episode's tonally dissonant A and B plots, arguing that they kind of muddy the intended character development and should probably have been split into different episodes if the writers wanted to include both plots. For episode 6, he notes that he's actually beginning to appreciate Angel Dust's character development, and, well, he's engaging with the show. Like as a piece of media. It's a miracle. You know why I never watched Velma? I mean, no, you don't know, because I've never discussed it, and I kind of feel gross talking about it now. It's because I knew what I was going to feel like getting home after a long day at work or school and sitting down to watch another shitty episode of a bad animated series that nobody liked. Sure, maybe I could handle that for like an episode or two, but eventually the act of turning on the TV is gonna start to feel, I mean, not to be dramatic, but kind of torturous. After a certain point, the ennui of watching Velma for a straight week would probably force me to really reflect on my life and ask myself, like, what am I even doing here? If I'd planned beforehand, maybe I could turn it into an interesting academic endeavor, or really put together some meaningful and constructive thoughts, but most of us aren't doing that when we make the decision to hate watch a piece of media. It's pretty clear to me that that's not what Possum Reviews was trying to do when he started watching Hazbin Hotel, or if he was just incredibly bad at it. No, he was watching out of spite, and in doing so, he revealed two possible paths for himself. One is the path that I've already mentioned, the path of tragic self-reflection, why am I even doing this? The other is, I think, the far more interesting path. After the first couple episodes, Possum Reviews watched past the stuff most hardcore haters had seen, and in doing so, he actually started to get invested. Sure, he clearly still didn't like it, and he keeps harping on his old, bad arguments, but his new critiques are better, more thoughtful. He doesn't shit on episode 6 for complete nonsense reasons that come out of left field. No, his thoughts are more layered, plot-focused. He's right. It really doesn't make much sense that the Seraph wouldn't expect Charlie to reveal Heaven's dark secrets. His summary becomes more accurate. It engages with the ideas that the show presents. Of course, I'm lightly inferring some of this based off of what he posted, but it seems to me that Possum Reviews has committed the cardinal sin of hate watching, enjoying himself. And isn't that super interesting? I often wonder what would happen if I rewatched The Rise of Skywalker. I'm sure I know enough bad things about the film that I don't think I could ever come out the other end thinking that it was a good movie, but maybe on rewatch I would find something to like. But okay, let me get to the ultimate, final, for real this time point, and that's this. This video isn't an attempt to dissuade you from disliking movies or even from criticizing them. Obviously, it's one of my favorite things to do. This video is more an attempt to get you to think about your goals with a piece of media before you go into it. I want you to steer yourself towards the second path, enjoying the experience, not necessarily because the thing you're watching is good, because oftentimes it isn't, but because you're learning something from it, because you're getting something, because you're experiencing something that you have not experienced before. For me, that just kind of means going into a piece of media hoping to be intrigued by something. Instead of foaming at the mouth at somehow Palpatine returned, maybe I can turn that into something constructive. Maybe I can think about how I would have handled that situation. How could I have turned this very obvious dumb idea, like bringing back the villain of the previous trilogy with absolutely no buildup, and made it seem like a good idea. I don't know, I mean, doesn't that seem more fun, more interesting? Despise Hazbin Hotel all you want, but let that vitriol give you something. Because, like it or not, the experience of watching Hazbin Hotel is an experience you can't get anywhere else. I forgot to write an outro. Like, subscribe, stick around for more media-related content. Wait, did I just reverse engineer the concept of film criticism and then pass it off as an original idea?